Welcome to the 30-Minute Hour. It's the personal development podcast for entrepreneurs and executive leaders who are looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Joining me as always, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
Happy Monday.
It is indeed a happy Monday. And today, it's going to get even happier because we're going to talk about the secret formula to thrive in any environment. So, Ted, I was thinking about the Washington Redskins of the old days. I'm not thinking about the Commanders now. That's
Okay. That was great, sir. Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the old days. And so they had a coach named Joe Gibbs, right, Ted? And Joe Gibbs had this secret formula to help him thrive in any environment because he was with the Redskins and he won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, right? Then he goes to NASCAR, something he knows nothing about. Doesn't have a background in NASCAR. Goes to NASCAR, wins 3 NASCAR championships with 3 different drivers. So he had the secret formula. He has this formula. Our guest, I think, has it as well. We're going to talk to him about it. I like to call it the portable success formula, meaning you can just take it with you. And I think that's going to be one of the big takeaways from this episode is as a listener, as a viewer, you'll discover ways to make your success portable and take it to different arenas like our guest has today. So Ted, I think this would be the perfect time for us to go ahead and just bring him on.
I'm going to bring him on.
All right, let's do that. Right.
Sounds like the perfect time.
Sounds like the perfect time. There you go. All right, so our guest, he is currently the Senior Vice President at Accenture. He leads initiatives within the Smart Mobility Hub, reinventing technology and operations for tolling and transit agencies worldwide. And prior to getting into the tolling industry, he spent 10 years as an entrepreneur where he successfully exited 2 different businesses. And he's a graduate of West Point. And then, Ted, you will love this next part I'm about to say about him. You ready? I know you've been waiting all day to hear this, Ted. He's a proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, better known as the Qs. George, I think we're having an IT issue. Something going on.
It looks that way, man. His Wi-Fi is cat, you know.
Man, this weather is impacting my connection.
Yeah, please join me in welcoming to the show, George Christopher.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, George, man, congratulations on all the success you've had, and it's an honor to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. It's listening to you, I'm like, man, I like to hear what that guy has to say too.
That was funny. George, I was looking at your face a couple times.
Yeah.
That's me. That's me.
Well, yeah. Okay. I'm here to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. Let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about West Point. I'm just curious about how did that experience, your time there at West Point, how did that ultimately shape you into the person you are now?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, people have asked me how it's impacted me before, but to be honest with you, you know, my journey started from childhood. You know, my grandfather was in the Army. My dad was an Army officer. And so when I applied to go to the academy, it was the only college I applied to. It was the only thing that I ever wanted to do because I was going to go in the Army, be an airborne ranger and fight the Chinese or the Russians, you know. And so my advisors used to tell me like, yeah, you know, you need to have some backup plans. I was like, for what? You know, I'm going to West Point, you know. So in terms of discipline, you know, I mean, that's my DNA, you know, to be on time is to be late. when I was growing up, and so, and making our bed was not an option, yes, sir, no, sir, that were not options. So it kind of started then. But to answer your question, going to West Point, what that did was it taught me how to deal with people in leadership positions who were above me that I thought were not qualified to tell me what to do. And honestly, it was my first experience at hazing. I didn't join the Qs until I left West Point. And so for your first year at the academy, they're hazing you. And so I'm up here. So I'm coming from Newport News, Virginia. It's where I graduated high school. And they call it Bad News 757. So I went to public school there. So, you get somebody in your face, you just punch them in the face and keep going. That's just how I dealt with my problems at that time at 18 years old. So here I am, 18 years old at West Point, braced up on the wall, and some little guy that I'm like, 6 months ago I'd have had you standing in the trash can, punching you in your arm, is yelling at me, and I'm having to have self-control, and so, and then, you learn in life, you're going to be in positions where people are going to be above you that you don't feel are qualified, and you have to navigate that. So that's really one of my biggest takeaways from there. I mean, I might be a little unorthodox, but the discipline and all that, I mean, I was raised that way. How I made my bed, folded my clothes. I mean, I still fold my clothes that way today. My wife, I was like, look, when I fold my clothes, I don't even let my wife fold my clothes because I need them done a certain way. So, yeah.
I just, one of the things I learned, just because somebody is in front of you doesn't mean that they're really ahead of you. So what advice do you have for somebody else that's watching or listening right now who's in that position? They look up at their supervisor but don't feel like that person is really qualified to.
Yeah.
How do they deal with that without getting themselves fired or something else?
It takes patience. I mean, you have to learn some breathing exercises or go meditate, but just be patient, because the thing is that one thing I've also learned is that the cream will eventually rise to the top. And so just because that person is ahead of you today doesn't mean that leadership doesn't realize that person's kind of out of place. They're just waiting for the right time and moment, maybe to move them or move you to somewhere else. And if you get to, but then also, still be on the lookout for other opportunities, other ways to either shine within your organization or move to another organization, look for another opportunity. But, it takes some self-control, to deal with that. It's, and it's not pleasant at times.
Yeah. And I think too, it teaches you humility. Because I think a lot of times as you advance, it does help if you have a level of humility. So I think when you say, and I just think, taking on a spiritual perspective, sometimes God is testing you.
Yeah.
To see what you're going to do. Are you going to be insubordinate, or are you going to serve and bloom where you are?
No, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. There's that Bible verse that says, be careful who you speak to. You never know if there's an angel amongst you, and so it's like, when I was younger, I was not the man I am today. And so a lot of those are hard-learned lessons, so.
And so if you could go back and talk to that younger version of yourself, knowing what you now know, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, the first thing I would tell him is don't wake up on a Saturday morning just to go to the Kappa Cool Out to pick a fight, But,
that's probably not a good thing. That's probably not a good thing.
But all jokes aside, play the long game. Work on yourself, because just like a house, just like, any building, anything that you build, the foundation must be solid, So play the long game, chase skills, chase your reputation, chase relationships. And by chase them, I mean, invest in them, not necessarily, invest in your friends, in your fraternity, in your organizations, in religion, if that's where you are. Invest in your skills, because I was too busy chasing the other stuff. And I chased until I ran out of breath, and I get back up and keep running, And so there's a lot of times when I wish I could go back. It's like, man, I messed up, or I wasted a lot of time. Also, like, be kinder to yourself, Progress isn't linear. It's not a straight line. There's ups and downs, and so be patient, detours can often become, advantages, I've learned more from my mistakes than any university that I've ever gone to. And so I also went to William and Mary and Howard Law, so I would take all of my mistakes, add them up, and I've learned more than all three of those universities,
Wow.
Invest in compounding habits. And what I mean by that are, if you read 20 minutes a day, that builds your knowledge, your character, you can look at the world and in a different manner, I keep these notebooks. I've done it for probably, 10, 15 years now, where every day as I'm in meetings, I'm writing down information from the meetings. But, it's like, it's like I journal my days, and I'll, so I put down ideas, I put down how I feel about things, people I've spoken to, and I can use that as reference, and I've kind of used that also to kind of build my personal board of advisors, so between the bros, between friends and people I've met along the way, it's but these are lessons that I learned, I'll turn 55, so I didn't learn that until 40. I didn't become a man until 40, really, in my eyes, So to sum it up, just be patient, play the long game. So,
it's interesting when you talk about patience and playing a long game, and going back to what we were talking about a couple minutes ago about leadership that, you feel that may not, should not be leading you, right?
Yeah.
For whatever reason. But we have to remember that leaders are in certain positions. It may be because of tenure, it may be because they have certain qualifications, or it may just be a relationship, right? Somebody put them in this position and they're not qualified, but at the end of the day, they're still your they're still your leader. They're still the leadership that you have to follow. And going back to what you were saying is, all you can control is what you can control yourself. So that means in investing in yourself and building your network and doing all the things that you need to do, even though you should be where Jim is right now. You're not. Jim is there. So, what you may be learning there, you may be learning what not to do. Right.
Yeah.
From that leader when you get to that role. So how you kind of make the best of that situation.
Yeah. Well, a huge part of that is building your own personal resilience. There's going to be setbacks, but you can't let them destroy you. And so the thing is, like, as I look at you gentlemen, our generation is raised differently than this generations that are coming up behind us. They're expecting to get a trophy because they wouldn't play the game. I only got a trophy when we won the championship.
That was it.
Otherwise, we went home sad. So
we might not even get snacks or drinks if we didn't.
That's right.
Win.
Now you come in ninth place. You're like, where's my trophy at?
Look, you look around, ain't nobody waiting for you. You lucky to get your ride home.
Walk home, you lost.
That's right. You should have practiced harder.
That's right.
Yeah. So build that resilience. Somebody says no or the door closes. That's okay. It's the next one will open, and it might take 5 or 6 tries, but the next one. So
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just great advice. And I think, like you said, eventually that the cream will rise to the top. So now, before entering your current tolling industry, you spent 10 years as an entrepreneur, and you successfully launched and exited 2 different companies.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about that experience.
Yeah. So the first business I started was a sports management company. I did that. I started that in 2003. At the time, I was working for an investment bank in New York, and so I had taken a leave of absence from that because I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. So actually, I think it was 2002. I approached the Iversons, Alan's mother primarily, and Allen Iverson, I guess for the audience, used to play basketball. For those who don't know, but talked to his mom about opening up a restaurant back in Hampton. And so we were going to call it Iversons. We had found a location, and anyways, some family events led Miss I to not being able to participate. And so she said, George, you should get into managing some of these players and doing some of the stuff that you do for us. And I was like, the whole idea of chasing after grown men didn't really appeal to me. But I was like, well, so I resisted. I reluctantly said, all right, I'll do that. And so actually the Iverson family actually introduced me to a lot of my first clients, so I had a couple players on the Eagles, a Cowboy, a Redskin was Sam Shea was one, so my first 5 or 6 clients in sports were directly attributed to the Iverson family, and then a couple entertainers. And then I started recruiting myself. And so I worked from 2003 to 2013 or so. I worked, I built it up to a roster of about 43 NFL players, a couple of basketball players, and a few entertainers. And so I did that. First, it just started off kind of as like this concierge business where, we paid their bills and ran errands for them, set up events. And then we moved into marketing. And then I moved into the money management. I went and I got a job at UBS. I was like, well, Swiss bank sounds kind of cool. So, let me help manage these guys' money. And so I went and became a financial advisor at UBS. And so actually a kind of a funny story about that is that, so one thing for folks to keep in mind is if you're an earner, you can command a lot of, let's just say, respect, financial services or any kind of sales job. And so one day I was living in Richmond at the time. I'm driving down Richmond, and so the Richmond has these 2 towers downtown, the waterfront towers, I think they're called. And so on the left side was UBS, on the right side was Merrill Lynch. And so I was like, well, let me go try the Swiss bank. So I park, I go up there. I had on a sweatsuit, so now this is the whole, back when, the powder blue Rocawear white Nike was hot, so I had on like a Sean John sweatsuit and some fresh J's, and so, I had my earrings, jewelry, like I'm all in that life at that moment. So I walk in there and to UBS and I talk to the receptionist, say, I'd like to speak to the manager. So she's like, I was like, I need to talk to him about a job. And so again, I'm looking like I'm coming from a music video and it's in an office that had no Black people. And so the manager came. I'll leave names out of it, but he was a Virginia Tech grad, a Hokie. I come to find out later. But anyways, he comes out. I go back, sit to his office. He's like, what? I say, look, I'm here for a job. I manage these players, I used to work for this investment bank. So I had a series 6 and 7 and 63. So I'd had them before they had expired. But I knew how to take the tests and do those things. I say, look, so I'm familiar with the investment industry, but I need a place to house the money. And so he's looking at me real skeptical. And I say, look, so if I call Alan or if I was like, so by this time I noticed he went to Virginia Tech. I was like, so if I call like D'Angelo Hall or somebody, if you talk to them, they say that, they'll invest their money here. Would you give me a job? And he's looking at me still like, kind of skeptical, but like, I was like, look, I said, his first name is Mike. And I said, look, Mike, either you're going to give me a job and get your cut off the money I'm going to make you, or I'm going to walk across to Merrill Lynch. I'm going to offer him a sweeter deal. He's going to make more money than you. And I'm going to bring more money to Merrill Lynch just to prove that you made a mistake. And so he's like, make the call. So at the time I was, was it Kevin Jones? Kevin was Kevin and Deanne, Kevin Jones was running back, and then D'Angelo Hall was a corner at the time. So they were the two hot prospects coming out of Tech. And so I had relationships with both of them. And so I called Kevin. So Kevin, he's like, if you make some money, can we put it? Oh yeah. And I kept trying to get D'Angelo, but it kept going to voicemail. But then, but he's like, but he recognized Kevin. And then I tried to reach Chuck Allen, and then so I called his mom and said, "Look, Miss I was like, if I do this, are we good?" Oh yeah. So anyway, she's looking at me. Long story short, I got the job there. But again, it was I'm going to produce for you. Now mind you, this is right before Obama gets elected. So this is in 2008. So during the election, so Obama gets elected. I'm walking out again. I'm the only black man. Like these guys are like everybody in that office listening to Rush Limbaugh at lunchtime. So I'm walking around there. I had on my suit. I had on like this a blinged out Obama t-shirt over my tie. And I go to we used to have these lunches. I walked into the lunch and I was like, yeah, he won, and like everybody's face turning red. They sweating like I know they just wanted to, but I had just brought in $5 million the day before, but I was like, what you gonna do? What you gonna do?
They said $5 million? Yes, we can.
Yeah. I was like, yes, we can. Yeah. So anyways, so we did did the money management. Then at some point I hired this guy who was a CPA to do their taxes. Football players have to pay taxes in every state they play in. And then, so then also we did tax strategies and stuff like that. And so anyways, so I did that for about 10 years and got tired of it and got tired of chasing grown men. And, it wears you down. And, but I had a whole lot of fun in the meantime, but it wears you down. So I had this young man who was an intern. His family was part of one of the big hotel families. I'll just say that, and one of the well-known hotel families. And his father purchased it, and for him to then do the sports management. So. And then the other business I actually started in 2011. So while I was doing the sports stuff, I was an adjunct professor at Virginia State. And so in 2009 or so, 2009 or 2010, Dr. Bay, who was like the head of the sports management part, he said, "Hey man, I want to introduce you to these guys who are in this. They do Medicaid billing. They have this Medicaid business, but they're making a lot of money and they need some advice." And so I was like, I'll see what I can do for them. And so I met these your friend, 3 Kappas, who are down in the Petersburg area. That they had this Medicaid business. They did like adult daycare, and they also worked with at-risk youth in the homes and such. And so I learned about the opportunity through them, talked to them a little bit. And then I ended up meeting some guys who are also from Virginia State who had a similar business. I invested in that one, provide them with some short-term loans, so to speak, to help them, gap payroll and stuff. But then in 2011, I started my own, but down in the Hampton area. So for Hampton and Virginia Beach. And so so that was integrated health services, actually still in operations down there. So I got that up and going, and but now see, this is before you had like electronic medical records and everything was kind of online, and so it's mounds of paperwork. And so Medicaid, so 2 years into it, Medicaid, they come and they do these surprise inspections, and they're looking for fraud. So I was like, well, I'm not worried about fraud. All our stuff is above board. But what I didn't know was that, so again, this is an investment for me. So I wasn't sitting there every day looking at the paperwork and all that. So I had this one counselor who had 2 clients over in Norfolk. One in Norfolk, one in Portsmouth. And so she would go see one young man from like 4 to 6, and then say she was seeing the other young man from 6 to 8. And, but there's no travel time in there. And so the families verified, yes, in fact, she went and saw them, but Medicaid was like, no, we have to disallow this because there's no way that she was in Norfolk from 4 to 6 and in Portsmouth 6 to 8. She should have been more diligent about her time. I had to write a check for $25,000 for those hours that she messed up on. So it was legit, no fraud, not didn't get any kind of trouble, but it made me realize that if I'm gonna be in this business, I need to be able to monitor this stuff better than I was. And so I found a gentleman whose daughter, he's probably one of the richest men in Virginia, actually, but his daughter had a master's in health and she wanted to have her own business, and so sold it to him. And so so I exited in 2013. I got out of that. So yeah, about 2 years. Yeah. So yeah, 13. Then I moved to DC. So I was in sports management, and then in a Medicaid business that focused on at-risk youth. And to be honest, I wish I would have gotten out of the sports stuff and just focused on that. It was very rewarding. You're doing good for the community, and I wouldn't have had to travel, and So, anyways, in hindsight, I wish I'd have just got out of sports earlier. So
what advice do you have? We have quite a few entrepreneur followers. I mean, based off of your experiences, your successful experiences, and even some of your failures and challenges. What advice do you have for those entrepreneurs who are listening to us right now?
So from a business standpoint, make sure you understand your legal structures, how it can protect you, learn about using a trust, but at a minimum, look at, LLC versus incorporation. Start with a problem, not necessarily the product. Like, if you're going to start your business, what problem are you solving, and how is that going to be beneficial? Don't start with the don't start with the product or the how. Learn to understand balance sheets and profit and loss statements, and that goes for any business. And you can even go to YouTube, or there's free ways to just learn, but understand that, because I didn't learn this until years later. They help you provide a lot of insight on your business, and especially with how banks could potentially give you loans and your business credit and all of that. But learning to understand your balance sheet and your profit loss statements is very important. Build a team around you, have good people, good resources, and again, just think long term. There is no get rich quick. Eric, when you mentioned some things that I would have taught myself when I was younger. So when I was in law school, there's this man named Nate Jones. He worked for the law school. And I remember Nate walked up to me one day. He was like, "Dog, we should start a prepaid cell phone business." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Man, we're gonna get these cell phones and we'll sell them in like 7-Eleven and the stores and people will buy the minutes ahead of time and we'll make money off them." I was like, "Oh, that's the dumbest ass idea I ever heard." And I walked off. Was I wrong? And so I was like, "Oh my God, man! Like, what if I'd have just listened to that guy? And we'd have been in a whole different, I'd be funding your podcast right now."
Right. Well, you blew it because we need to be funding our podcast right now.
We're looking forward to that funding, man.
Man, I was like, "Man, that's the dumbest idea, dog, man. What are you talking about?" Man? So,
wow.
Nate, man, I'm here from Nate if he sees this. He's still in the DC area. So,
man, and you said something else I want to highlight too. That if you're thinking of starting a venture, you should start with the problem and not the product.
Yeah. It's like, solve for the problem, because, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to come up with this new software. I'm going to come up with the next Microsoft Word. But is that what you really need though? Like coming up with a new word for like, what are you solving? Now, that's not to mean you don't have a great idea for a product that will sell, but just keep in mind, what problem am I solving? With this product. And, so I think about those things all the time in my current role as we create new technologies and softwares for toll roads. I'm looking at problems they have, and then we go solve for the problem. And then we create the technology to help fix that.
Yeah, perfect segue into our next question I had in mind. So you're currently the SVP, Senior Vice President at Accenture. Mm-hmm. So talk to us about what do you do? What's a typical day in the life look like for you?
Man, to be honest, my typical day is me sitting in front of my computer just like this in meetings for like 7 or 8 hours straight, and then having to do my work, so. A typical day is about 10 hours, 8 till about 6. Out of those 10 hours, probably 7 of those are in front of a screen in some sort of meeting. And then whether it's internal or external meetings with clients. And so typically the people that I speak to are the heads of either a DOT or a state agency, I think you guys are in Maryland, so MDTA is so actually the COO for MDTA and I are the co-chairs for the AI and machine learning subcommittee for the tolling industry. His name is Richard Jeremio. And so I've actually have a very close relationship with the people that run the Maryland tolling agency. But I mean, it's involved in everything. Again, P&Ls. So no matter what, so at Accenture, everything has a P&L. So whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in transportation, you're in industrials, or you're in the public sector, like no matter what vertical. And so Accenture has 800,000 employees, so we do a little bit of everything. And so, but every business unit has a P&L. And so that's why I was saying, it's important to understand the balance sheet and the P&L, no matter what you do. Whether you work at a big company like Accenture or you start your own, you need to understand your finances.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
So you've achieved success in the military, as an entrepreneur, and even right now where you are in the tolling industry. So how is it that you've been able to thrive, which is this is the theme of the episode. What's your secret formula to be able to thrive in all these different environments?
You know, I saw the what you're going to call the episode in your email, and I was trying to think, of what is my excuse? And so two things popped to my head initially. So one was, I don't know if y'all remember this TV show called The Pretender. It came on in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. This guy named Jared used to go around, and he was like on the run. And so every episode was him pretending to be either a policeman or a doctor or a lawyer or an astronaut, and he would solve some complex problem. And I was like, well, maybe I'm kind of like the Pretender, I was like, yeah, but that guy was real smart. So then I was like, well, let me think about. So then I was like, well, Forrest Gump, so like maybe I'm like remember in like Forrest Gump, like, one day he looks up, he's getting a medal from the president, and the next thing he's playing football, and and he just kind of stumbled into these things. Like when I look at my career, honestly, I have stumbled into everything that I've done. I don't think I've ever fully applied for a job. The first resume that I think I've ever used was when I came to Accenture, but they were recruiting me and they needed the resume for paperwork, so like,
file.
yeah, to have it on file. So like, so then I have to look, so again, it goes to the foundation, I think, of who I am, because sometimes I'll be honest with you, I feel like there's this term, it's oh man, there's a psychological term, but like, I feel like, I started thinking, am I really qualified for this job? But then I look at my accomplishments and say, oh yeah, I am. Like when I think, am I really qualified to have this job? But then I look at the last 3 years so I've been in Accenture for only 7 months. Before then, I was at a Spanish company. And for the 3 years leading up to me joining at Accenture, each year, my team, we won at least $100 million in new business every year. And so when I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, should I really be doing this? I was like, well, I've won more business in this industry than this company has, so I've won more money than, as a matter of fact, one of my first meetings at Accenture, they were like, George, what did you think about Accenture? When you used to bid against us? I was like, well, sir, I didn't think about you. I was like, I would say, okay, Accenture's bidding, I would check them off. I was like, they're not going to beat me. I was like, you have never been in the orals against me. You've never beaten me on a deal. I was like, I was like, there are other companies I was more concerned about than you. Why are you here then? I was like, because I feel like Accenture has all the tools in the world. This is places like coming from my old company to here, it's like me coming from the Flintstones to the Jetsons, man. This place is like the Death Star. We got like all kinds of technology and super smart people. We just got to package it right and present it to the customer. And so like, I feel like I'm one of the, so my boss is great, and there are some other great people that understand tolling, but I literally know everybody in tolling. And so we package that. But my point though, to answer your question is when, for me, my common thread amongst all of this, is one was I listened to people. So like in the sports management, I would listen to what the players want. And I would find the one common thread and address it. So like when you're addressing, so like Black athletes, right? Most of them are coming from the hood. Most of them are saying, George, I want to make sure I don't pay taxes, at the end of the year. They want to see a tax refund. Think about all Black people growing up. No matter your circumstances, your family waited until they got their tax return to go buy the next TV, to get the next family car, to buy the, kids' clothes. That tax return was a big thing. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna make sure these guys get a check, and so, or I would figure out a way to minimize that tax. Because the smart thing that an economist would say was, let's invest, make money, and pay the taxes out of that. So I'd be like, okay, let me get the client first, and then I teach them how to really, get into using their money later. So one is I listen to the people around me to develop, come up with my strategies on how to win in that industry, right? So and then I, there's always continuous improvement. The Japanese call that kaizen. And so I figure if every day, if I can make a 1%, just a small incremental improvement in what I'm doing, again, that goes back to that compounding habits. If I can make a 1% improvement every day, at the end of the year, I've actually accomplished something. And so continuous improvement. I'm always trying to learn. Again, you can just use YouTube to learn stuff. There's so many ChatGPT. There's so many options now to learn skills and improve yourself. That's free. That people have access to. And then to be honest, make sure that your personal life is in order. For me, because if not, it becomes a distraction. I'm married. I got 4 kids. Everything I'm doing is for my family. And so as long as I know what I'm focused on, I don't let other things distract me. And so I learned how to say no to people without a reason, just because I don't feel like it, my mom would say, "Hey, it's like, can you?" No, I can't. Why not? I don't know, Ma. I just don't feel like it. Yeah. Now my mom, she gets grace, but outside of my mom and dad, and my wife, a lot of everyone else can get no, and so learn to say no. Treasure your time. So learn, take care of your time. Listen. Stop talking so much and just listen, because people tell you what you need to do in your job. People tell you what you need to do to succeed. And then also, again, listening to that bad boss. Well, I don't want to be like that. Again, that just comes from listening. Listen to your coworkers who are achieving. What are they doing? How is this person is where you want to be? How did they get there? Talk to them, build that relationship with them, learn some of their secrets, see if it applies to you. So for me, everything I've done is just adapting. I listen and adapt.
Listen and adapt. And these are all great insights that can help you to thrive in any environment. Those of you that might have just logged on, talked about listening, talked about continuous improvement, always learning, making sure your personal life and your personal house is in order. You can do that. That's the formula. Yeah. All right. So George,
Eric, you missed one real good one though, was being able to say no.
Oh, that's saying,
right. Like,
thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's one that you really hit me, because you feel like you got to find a way to say yes on so many occasions, and sometimes it's so much easier just to say no.
Yeah, no, I got trapped in that, especially like as you start being more successful, more people start coming to you, especially family, friends, I've had to cut off some of my best friends because all they ever did was ask me, "Hey man, let me hold something." Man, come on, man. I got 4 kids, man. What are you talking about? I'm gonna have 4 kids at college at the same time. Let me hold something. And so it's like, so no, bruh. So can't do it, man. It's hard. It is hard to learn to say no when you're used to being that person. But you got to learn to say no.
Yeah, then you said something that I thought was critical on saying no and not necessarily having a reason.
Yeah.
I just don't want to do it.
I just don't want to do it. I don't have a reason to say no. I just don't want to do it.
Well, I was listening to the brother when he started talking about even to his mom. I was like, okay. Yeah, my mom ain't gonna have,
I'm gonna tell you something. It's tough, But my mama would have me do something for my cousins over here and this cousin over there. No, mom. Now I'm selective when I say no.
That's right. That's right.
If it's something for my mama, she gets it. If I gotta go cut her grass, if I gotta do something, I'm not talking about for her.
Yeah, right.
But if I let my mom guide me, then I'm my second cousin is gonna get all that same stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, because her mother asked her, you know. So no.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. So George, we're at Ted's favorite part of the show. It's called Write This Down. He just loves this part of the show. This is where we each go around and talk about at least one idea from today's episode that the people need to write down so they can level up. So George, you're the guest of honor. What do the people need to write down from this episode?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's the topics that we just discussed. I would say them, you know, learn to say no. I'm gonna say something that's going to be kind of out of left field, and so I'm gonna say prioritize your health. You know, make sure that you're getting sleep, exercise, nutrition. You know, energy fuels everything else. It fuels your creativity. It fuels your motivation. Because if you're tired, you're hungry, you're not there. You know, nobody's there. You know, Snickers has whole commercials over there about being hangry. You know, I mean, so you know, and especially as you're starting to get in your, you know, I'm starting to lose friends of mine in their 50s and 60s. You know, over stuff that could have been prevented. So prioritize your health, get your sleep, exercise, nutrition, your mental health. One thing in my youth, so I actually have ADHD, but I was always smart. So in college, I never addressed it. And so I was always smart enough to just get by, even though I had this madness going on, like this circus going on in my head while I was thinking, you know. So now as an adult, I treated it. It quiets the noise. It's calm, you know, seeing exercise, eating right, not eating some of the foods that trigger. And I'm using more, holistic views right now. Like I'm not taking Ritalin and all that other stuff, you know, though some people may need medication, but I am more intentional in how I'm doing things, and it helps, you know. So prioritize your health, continuously improve.
Write that down.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, George. All right, Ted.
I can't follow behind that, man. I mean, he dropped so many nuggets. I mean, you know, brother just dressed so much. I mean, just kind of going back to where you started this with and talking about Joe Gibbs and being successful in all areas. I can see how George has been successful in all areas, man. When you talk about, you know, and that's what really, you know, caught my attention the most, and being successful in kind of sports and health and healthcare business. And then, you know, now, and, you know, just, you know, kind of, I guess, Fortune X companies and Accenture. And, you know, I'm not surprised that, you know, how he's successful, but just the nuggets that he just presented, you know, and the continuous improvement and learning, and, you know, and health and personal life and all of that. I mean, that all, you know, plays into how, you know, he's been able to have that type of success across all. And so, you know, that's what I got the most out of this is, you know, just, you know, doing those things that prepare you to be successful in all of your endeavors is important, right? You know, whether it's sleep, right, that's going to work for you if you're doing with sports management, health, working in the Fortune X company or any other venture that he goes into, right? And, you know, and just continuous learning. And then he also shared about, you know, networking has to be key, right? When you say that you're getting into opportunities without having to put a resume out there, that's because you have a network out there. And as they say, your network is your net worth, right? I don't know if you caught this, Eric, but George early on just dropped Allen's name. Like, I was thinking about my cousin Allen. No, he was talking about Allen Iverson. He just
That's a
dropped
different
Allen
Alan.
Iverson. You didn't catch it. He dropped that out there like, oh yeah, Allen, right? For us, we would have had to
And
hear.
at first, I was about to say Chuck, but I was like, well, everybody don't know Chuck, so it's Allen, because
That's right.
really you
That's
call
right.
him Bubba Chuck, but it's Chuck.
Yeah. And so just being in those situations, and who's in a situation where a family member says, why don't you start doing this for other players? And then, and I know a little bit about that, and at one point looking into sports management and thinking, oh, we got to go out and find players. No, you had a situation where you had a Hall of Famer going out and bringing you players until it got to a point you looked at it and said, when you said, and I heard you also say, I know I'm going off a bit, but I heard you also say you got to a point where, it was tough, kind of managing grown men. Right. And I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking, okay, you probably got some 20 somethings that are multimillionaires, and you're trying
never had a job before.
Right. Like, man, I was working at a grocery store, and I remember getting my first check at that age and was like, man, this is amazing. So to be thinking millions,
and they go
I'm
wild
sure you
out.
got some stories to tell. So,
oh, well, yeah. I don't know what rating this show has, but
right.
I got a lot I could share. Yeah,
and you might be the only person in their lives that's telling them no.
You're right.
Everybody else is just like, oh yeah, oh you're the greatest, yeah.
That's
it.
I
mean, in the beginning, you gotta, you have to accommodate, but once you get to a certain point, it's like, no, I mean, you can't do that. Then but no, I mean, it's and so like I didn't even get into Miss Iverson and I, we had an ABA team. We bought an ABA team at one point in like 5 or 6 or something. I co-produced a 1-hour TV show on TV One. So there's a gentleman here in the DC area, Daryl Dawson. He owns a company called Grindstone. It's a clothing company. He and I co-produced this 1-hour special on the Iversons that aired on TV One for a couple of years. So I've done a little bit of everything, had we waited 2 years later, that's when like love and hip hop and all these things started becoming popular. But our special on Miss I, man, we had cameos from like LL Cool J, Queen Latifah, Ludacris, Wood Harris, Regina King, a whole bunch of people were in that. We were hanging out with them at Houston All Star and a bunch of stuff. And but like that had that been 2 years later, I'd be talking to you from my yacht, because it would have been better than Love and Hip Hop, better than all these shows that have made it since with real star power. I ain't know who Scrappy was, but I bet you know who Allen is. Kobe. I mean, I met Kobe during that weekend in Houston. So, yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, this is awesome. So my contribution to this segment, I write this down. It goes back to what you were talking about, listening. So I think that's the foundational thing. Like if you want to be able to succeed in different things, especially things you don't have a background in. And one of the things I came up in the automotive industry, and I'll say a lot of the shop owners that struggle the most are the ones that are the most experienced and the ones who are the best the best technicians. Why? Because a lot of times they think they already know certain things, so they're less likely to listen.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll just go fix the car myself. What do I need to hire a technician? What are you talking about? I've been doing this for 25 years. Whereas if you're new to something, you don't have a choice but to listen.
A lot more attentive. Yeah.
Right. And as long as if you can surround yourself with the right people and you kind of know who to listen to, you have a chance to succeed. And I've had people know nothing about cars, and now they're an automotive mogul, because they put certain things in place and they did what you talked about. I just think listening is a foundational skill, and I think it's the most underrated skill for someone's success. So write that down.
Agreed.
Absolutely. All right, George, this has been an inspiring episode. Now we're ready to thrive in any environment. What can people do to connect with you if they have questions, they want to get more information from you?
I mean, what like my email address or something?
Email, social media.
Yeah.
What's the best way?
LinkedIn.
So that's one thing I've done is I don't have any social media. The only social media I have is LinkedIn, so they can look me up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I got rid of Facebook and all those other distractions because they became a time drain. I'd wake up scrolling my TikTok and Instagram, those things, man. I would start scrolling, and 45 minutes later, it's like, man, what have I done? So don't have any of those anymore. But I'd say LinkedIn, or my personal email address is george.christopher@me.com. So I had one of the first iPhones. I've had iPhones since the beginning. And so before they had iCloud, they had this thing called Mobile Me. And so all the email addresses were at me.com. So george.christopher@me.com.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Now,
Okay.
now know this, now he may say you can ask him anything, but he may say no. Right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And look, I might even just delete without the no. But
there you go.
But look, if they send me an email and they put this podcast in the subject line, I'll be sure to read it and I'll respond. So yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, George. Thank you for sharing everything you shared. For those of you that are listening and watching, don't forget to share the show.
Share the show. Share the show.
Yeah, don't keep great information just all to yourself. Don't keep it bottled up. And don't forget, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those podcasting platforms, and look up the 30-minute hour and make sure you subscribe and follow us. That way you never miss a future episode. And that's our time for this week's show. And as you're thinking about the secret formula to thrive in any environment, remember this: don't allow perfect to become the enemy of progress. Have a great one.